So this is the third tutorial organized by Bridging Divides on sharing what you did. It's a tutorial, a three-part tutorial on Spyral. And I have put here, and Augustine, you will hopefully put it into the chat. I've put a link to the Spyral notebook, which has an outline of what we're doing today. I'd like to take a moment to thank Bridging Divides and the people at Toronto Metropolitan University for their work in supporting this. I want to acknowledge and thank Augustine, who has helped me build these tutorials. And I also want to thank the people like Yasmin, Abu Laban, who has organized the training the training for bridging divides in general. There's all sorts of useful training. So what's going to happen today? This is the third and the last workshop. What we're going to start with is a review of some of the things we did last week. In this case, I've created a review which I will show some things, but I also have some things for you to try, just so you can uh, sort of recapitulate the stuff you did. Then what I'm hoping will happen is we will look at some notebooks that you guys have developed, and you should all be able to share your notebooks, and you can ask questions, and we can talk about them. That might take up the rest of the hour, and that would be a great thing. If it doesn't, I have a couple of notebooks that I can share and walk through, and you can see some different things. And then, if we have time at the very end, I have a little tutorial on how to read the JavaScript code. So I'm not going to teach you how to write JavaScript from scratch. What I'm going to teach you how to do is how to read code and how to adapt it, because we saw at the end of the last tutorial that you can go to the help and you can grab examples of code. So I just wanted to sort of give you some vocabulary to talk about and think about the code. Any questions about what we're going to do today? Is everybody with me on the Spyral Training 3 notebook? Feel free to say no, wait a minute, or put something in the chat if you're not. Okay, so I'm going to review the stuff we did last week, and to do that, I'm going to actually go to a review notebook, um, which is here. This notebook, I should say, this notebook covers a bunch of things, but leaves places where you can do stuff. And I've also got a link to the same notebook but filled out. If you get lost or you can't figure out what you're doing, you can look at the same notebook filled out. Here's the example of what it looks like filled out if you've got it working right. But let's actually look at this blank one. And then let's quickly go over some of the things, and I'll show you how I can do them, and then I'll let you loose, and you can try them yourselves. So the first thing is making sure that we're logged into our GitHub account and able to save documents. I am actually logged in. The way I can check is I'm going to click this View Your Account, and it calls it up. I'm going to log out so you can see what happens if I'm not logged in. If I click this, it says sign in with GitHub. I would click that. It would go to GitHub, and assuming that I've already authorized in GitHub, you get this message and it brings you back. And now, when you click the little person, you'll see that you are logged in. If you haven't logged into GitHub, sometimes you have to take a little bit longer. You have to log into GitHub, and then when you go there, it comes back and it's all there. But once you've done that, once you've authorized yourself, you can click this little cloud button and pull down to save. Now, what I'd like you all to do, and you don't have to do it right now, I'm going to go through the different parts of this review and then let you loose to do them. What I'm going to ask you to do is to save as, which is another word. Well, it's the more common word for what in computing we will call forking. You will save this notebook under your own name and your own account. So then you can do whatever you want with it. You can save it. You can always go and find it because it'll be in your catalog of the notebooks that you have. So I'm going to ask you to do a save as, where you'll click this, you'll give it a new name, whatever it is, and that will then be your version of the notebook, and it won't affect my version. Once you've got that, we then want to load a notebook. And in particular, we want to no load a notebook for this collection of materials. This is the parliamentary um, Parliament of Canada, the interventions that have to do with immigration and artificial intelligence and stuff like that. So this is we saw that before. But what I'm going to ask you to do is to, in this code cell, I'm going to ask you to configure the code cell for corpus. And then I'm going to ask you to choose corpus ID. I'm going to ask you to figure out what the corpus ID is. You can look up here and you can see it, enter it there, give it a data name. So I'll just go ahead and do that and quickly show you. I'm going to select this, copy it, paste it, call it my corpus, assign, and I can see it's worked because it's got an ID and it tells me all this other information that it's created the corpus. Then what we're going to do is we're going to go to Voyant again, and we're going to export the Spyral code to a temporary notebook. And we don't need all of this. We just need this line here. So we're just going to export that. We're going to export this. We're going to grab this line, copy it, go back here, paste it in. I need to double check that the data name I assigned it, my corpus, is the same one down here. And I don't think we actually need these parameters, so I'm just going to delete that. And when I run it, I should get the reader tool, or I could put a different tool in there. The point is that I am copying and pasting from Voyant. Then what we're going to do is we're going to try editing some code. Um, so if, for example, when we were here, if we exported the trends visualization, it's going to take a moment. So I export this code. I'm going to delete that. I don't need it. Back here, I'm going to paste it in, and now I'm going to edit it. In particular, I'm going to try to edit this array of words. I'm going to get rid of the ones that I'm not interested in. Let's say I want to get rid of government and people in need and just keep Canada and Canadians. And again, I'll try that, see that it works. So I'm editing code. And then the last thing I'm going to do is I'm going to paste some code in from here. I'm going to go to the tools documentation. I'm going to get something like, let's get phrases. I'm going to get the example, paste it in. I'm actually going to get rid of all of this. Do I want to get rid of all of it? Phrases. Yeah, I'm going to keep the query. And I'm going to see if there are any phrases that have the words Canada. Let's see if that works. Ah, of course, I need to, down here, I need to get rid of Austin because Austin doesn't write about Canada. I write my corpus. And now I see a bunch of phrases that have the word Canada in them. These are phrases that repeat. I can sort them and see the ones that show up the most often. I'm closing the help, taking its time. And so Canada has 8 times, Canada the Canada Caregiver Credit, Canada is a Canada Revenue Agency. So we can see some phrases that occur. So I want to let you all loose now. Fork that notebook, and I'm going to take it back to the state it was in. So you can fork the notebook and go through and do the review. Make sure you can save it as under your own name. Try the loading, exporting code, editing the code, pasting the code from help. So take it away. How's it going? Is anyone having trouble, or does anyone have a question about this review? You can put your questions in the chat if you have any. And Augustine, if you can keep an eye on the chat if somebody posts something. Um,
Yeah.
Augustine, can you think of some questions that people should ask, but they're too embarrassed to?
Yeah, the difference between the save and the save as, for instance.
Ah, good question.
Yeah.
So typically, if you haven't saved, if you've got a notebook that is brand new, so I'm going to create, sorry, I'm just going to I'm going to create a brand new notebook. So this has not been saved. I'm just going to change the text a little bit. Just change the metadata a little bit. So I've got a slightly different notebook here. In this case, the first thing I need to do is to save. And that gives me the ability to give it a notebook ID. The save as, if you have a notebook that you've already saved. So this one has already been saved. When I click save, it doesn't ask me for an ID. If I was looking at somebody else's notebook, it would. And that's where the save as, you're not allowed to save your version of this notebook. If you do anything to it, you're not allowed to save it because it's saved under my credentials. But you can save a version for yourself, and that's where save as comes and allows you to fork and to make your own copy. And this can be extremely useful because if you see a notebook that basically does what you want to do in your research project, you can fork it and then change the loading corpus section to load your own corpus, your own document, and then go through the other cells and run them, and you all of a sudden you have something that's working for yourself. Any other questions? I'm going to stop sharing for a moment, just see if anybody has questions. Do you need more time? Or is it all going well? Huang, how are you doing? Did that review work? Were you able to get
Yes. Yeah.
okay.
Great. Yeah.
Okay, so what we're gonna do now is we're gonna move on to the next the next section here. So what we're gonna do now is we're gonna look at some notebooks. So I'm going to quickly look at one and then I'm going to open it up to the rest of you who might have one to look at. So this particular notebook here is similar to the Parliament one that we've been working with, but this one is a much bigger data set of all the speeches that have to do with immigration. Not the previous one was limited to immigration and artificial intelligence or AI, whereas this is just all these different speeches about immigration. And what you can see when I write these notebooks, I like to sort of, at the beginning, I like to sort of say what they are. I like to connect them. I have a notebook in which I've got a list of all the different ones I'm doing for bridging divides. I like to have a link to the Voyant so I can go back and forth between the interactive and the notebook. Then here I'm loading the data. Uh, in this case, I am loading the file first. I'm not actually making a corpus. And then I'm using the load corpus with a bunch of these parameters in order to load the table and to get it in the form I want. So I'm telling it it's a CSV. Um, there are headers. The titles of each document I want to come from column 3. I want each document to be pulled from the rows. The content is in column 7, and I want to group by 3. And so I run that, and that produces a corpus ID. And here, I don't need to run those previous cells. I can now just run this one because I've already loaded the corpus. We've already got a corpus ID stored on the server. I just run this. It reassigns this, and from here on in, everything should work. So I'm gonna run this and get a list of the documents. I was asked last week, how do I go about, thinking through a corpus? One of the first things I often do is just double check, especially if I'm loading from a spreadsheet. I just double check what documents I have. And so I've got these ones are sort of the expected ones, but then we have some that I did not expect. So we have a blank. So somewhere in our spreadsheet, which actually has quite a few interventions, There are some blanks where the party isn't specified. There's somewhere independent. Sorry, the party that is specified is an independent or a Force Démocratique or Québec Debout. So there are different things in that column that are producing these other documents, but I still have a fairly fair number of words, 934,000 for the NDP, 300 and a million words for the Conservatives, over a million for the Liberals, and so on. Remember, this is since 2014, so it's a much bigger data set. Then the thing I do next is I like to follow words and themes. So if I have some things that I want to look at, I can just I create some code here. I set a variable where I can type in the words I want to follow, and then I like the trends tool a lot. And so here I am looking at the word. The asterisk means any word beginning with CRIM, crime, criminal, crimes. It will sort of gather all those words. It's going to give me a bar chart. I've set the style of the box just to sort of control the size of the panel. I want raw distributions. I don't want relative distributions. And here you can see how words with CRIM, as you might expect, show up under the conservatives, talk a lot more about crime than other people. But the liberals and the NDP talk about it a certain amount. So I can then, something I often do if there's a word that interests me, in this case, immigration, I can ask for collocates. And that shows me the words that are nearby. Minister, the Minister of Immigration, Canada, specific, rural, refugees, Quebec. What are the words that are being used in the neighborhood of this? And I can even get what's called a collocates graph. So I can provide some words and I can begin to create this sort of graph here of the collocates. This graph can be trimmed in different ways. You can click and you can remove words and you can freeze them in various places. You can add more words. You can fetch more collocates. So you can play around with it and build a sort of semantic graph. And then I want to focus in on particular parties. So here I'm using a tool called document terms. So it's going to give me a list of all the terms, and I've given it a particular index, number 6. So if I go back up here, you can see number 6. Remember, these indexes start at 0. So 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Oh, no, sorry, I didn't count. 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I guess this is the independents. I actually want 0. Let's look at the conservatives. So I'm going to do the doc index is 0. Here it says conservatives is 2. So maybe I'll put 2 in there. I put a little comment to myself. I'm sorting it by a particular type of sort, which shows me which words the conservatives use a lot more than anyone else. Let's run this. And it shows me the words that they're using that they're using more frequently than other people, which so I can sort of burrow down and look more closely at the conservative rhetoric. Here, I'm taking the same spreadsheet and loading it. Looks like I've got to go back up and rerun the this one. And Well, I'm not gonna mess with that right now. But there you are. You see a sort of complex thing where I'm exploring it in different ways using, I've got a lot of data here because Voyant can actually handle a fair amount. So I'm going to stop there and ask if there's other people who would like to show their notebooks. Is there anyone who would like to show a notebook that they're working on or one that they've done that does something interesting?
I
Um,
can go now.
yes, please do. So Huang, take it
Yeah.
away. So you click the share button at the bottom.
Oh,
And now
can you
you've
see
got
my
a,
screen now?
yep, yep,
Yeah. Okay. So, all right.
there we
Here's
go.
my yeah.
Notebook.
Here's my notebook for elite framing of energy issue in Alberta from 2015 to 2025. This is our different project with different team. But before coming to this training session, I already got my corpus. So here is my Excel file. Um, that I prepare for the corpus with piece number, newspaper, author, title of piece, date of piece, PME opposition or full text. So we're collecting newspaper that cover all little speeches or interviews about issues of energy transition in Alberta. So I uploaded these Excels on Voyant and then I export a spiral notebook which I name is E-List Framing of Energy Issue in Alberta 2015 to 2025 with my name Hương Ly. And the first part is this is a study of how PMEs and oppositional leader frame and communicate their position on energy issues in Alberta from 2015 to 2025. Um, so again, the first one is load the corpus, and then the next text I say explore the document. So here I want to get a list of document which in this case are premise and oppositional leaders. So I upload the Excel file by leader leader, premier and opposition leader in Alberta from 2015 to 2025. Um, so here you can see my document with uh, Brian Jean or Jason Nixon or Kenny or Kenny with Notley or Kenny with Smith, like, premier with opposition leader in that period of time. Um, and then I exploring the corpus. So the first panel, I want to look for the teams to explore um, by getting a list of the words across the corpus sorted by frequency. Um, so here you can see give me you can see my worth with the most frequency here, like said or Alberta with 33 times. And then in the next panel, I am looking to explore distribution of a set of words. So here I I am interested in those words like oil, pipeline, renewable energies, energy transition, or carbon tax. So I got that. I got this bar charts to compare um, the distribution of the words that I am interested in. Um, in the next panel, I am exploring the allocate words that allocate with targets what such as pipelines with expansion, pipeline with chance, uh, a pipeline with project, carbon taxes or pipeline projects with S, something like that. I will need more time to explore the analysts in the future, though. In the last panel here, I explore the context of a words or like a different words. So here I am looking at carbon tax. So with the document of Kenny, there is like there those context like places that don't have like I have more context here, right? All right, so in the next, I am going to um, explore deeply into the corpus. I want to use the allocate graph to explore the vocabularies that allocate with pipeline, renewable energies, energy transition, or carbon tax. Here is the first graph that I got with the pipelines. And yeah, I can also play with this like this, right? uh, and yeah, I will need more time to look deeply into this analysis too. I also build that graph with renewable energies, um, with the term energy transition, with the other term carbon tax. Um, and then I am also interested in how carbon tax is described. So I built another context panel here to see in which document carbon tax and in which context that carbon tax deliver or refer or to be discussed. And yeah, I will need more time to look at this and to have a deeper analysis of this. And lastly is the worst cloud. Yeah, I'm looking I'm looking for like a circus of carbon tax, oil, energy transition, renewable energies, highlight, burdens or climate change. But I got only of this. Maybe I need to clean my corpus more because I think that like I need to clear and to delete a lot of um, garbage in this than to get a better word cloud with the targeted terminology that our project is interested in. So that is for my um, Spiral notebook. Now I'm going to stop share. Thank you for listening.
That's fabulous, and I like the way you're thinking through the text. You're starting with the high level and then going down to creating the actual sort of semantic webs. One of the things that occurs to me is that you could use, and I like how you're using the different parameters for some of these tools. One parameter that you can use is the doc index parameter, because that would allow you to look at just the words that Brian Jean is using, or just the words that Smith
Mm.
is using. If you wanted to do a semantic web, compare one person to another, and what the words are that
Oh,
Brian
nice. Yeah.
Jean.
Mhm.
Um, yeah,
Yeah,
that's
I like
fabulous.
that. One person.
Johanna, I didn't didn't hear, you were breaking up there.
Okay, I'm saying that I like that semantic web stuff that will compare one person to another in the text. Like it can be used, I think, for study of novels. So I'm interested to know more about that.
So I'll share and very briefly show how that tool works. If we're just in Voyant and we click here, it's available to you here. It's also called links. I'm going to export this so that it fills the screen. So we have, by default, it just sort of comes up with a set of words here, but I could focus in on a word, Canada, you know, so we've got, let's say I wanted to do people. This thing you can grab it and stretch it to which can be useful if you want to do a screen capture. And one of the things that Huang showed us is that if you hold down the control key and click,
Mm-hmm.
you get the ability to fetch more collocates. So
Mm-hmm.
it'll keep on adding more and more collocates. And the collocates are the words within 5 words. This is the context down here. So you can increase the context, but typically it's the words within 5 words. So it'll be words that are nearby, and it'll grab a certain number of them. So let's say Vegerville. That looks really interesting. I'm going to hold down and I'm going to fetch collocates for Vegerville. So now we have a couple, obviously Vegerville and immigration somehow come up together. The other thing you can do is you can delete words. So I'm going to remove year, processing, cost, benefit. You can trim this until it looks the way you want. So does that help you? Does that help you, Johanna, understand how that tool works?
Yes, 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 yes. It's understood. But what I'm just looking at, what if I have a literary text, a text
Yeah.
like a novel, where it talks about space, it talks about people, character at a particular location, just to map. Okay, for example, I want to see what so character A have said, character B have said, just to find out that uh, a mutual interaction between the or sequential interaction between the characters.
Hmm.
Yeah.
To separate out the characters, what you probably need to do is to I'm gonna I'm gonna share here is you need to uh, you're gonna want to use XML, and this gets more complicated. So we have in the sort of tutorials on Voyant, we have a tutorial on managing corpora with spreadsheets or XML. And I'm just going to open that here. And we have a section so we start with spreadsheets, and then we go to XML. And here's some example XML, but it's not, I need to think about where it is, but one of the things that you can do is you can tag all the different speakers with XML, and then you can group by speaker, and that would allow you to see what each speaker says about different places or about other speakers. So you could focus in on a specific speaker and see what language they use about other speakers. They could search for names of other speakers in the first speakers section. So let me think about where do I have a good example of that. Let's see, coding. This is the list of tutorials. And somewhere around here, creating again. I'm pretty sure I had one that had XML in it, but I'm not remembering where I put it. Oh, doing things with XML. So here you can see I've got an XML file. It's the first scene, first act of Romeo and Juliet. Each speech has been tagged with the name of the speaker. And that allows me to load the corpus so that I get the speeches by the different speakers. They're just two speakers, Gregory and Samson. And then I can search inside those documents. So I can treat these as separate documents. So that's it's hard work because tagging a novel for all the speakers is going to be a fair amount of work. Is there someone else who wants to share a notebook? Charity. You're breaking up, but if you want to share a notebook, hit the share button. Augustine, do you want to share a notebook?
Yes, I am. I'm happy to do that.
So, Joanna, you were asking for the link. I'm going to. This is the link for doing things with XML, but you can always get at. We have a list of tutorials, which is right here, which have tutorials on all sorts of things. Go ahead, Augustine. Share your screen and show us something.
Yes.
So, the notebook I'll be sharing is a couple of tutorial made by some of the Voyant team members, part of the team, and in particular, John Bradley and Sean has been working on the use of large language models with Spyral. And how you're going to do it is not that you're going to write a lot of codes, but they have simplified through what they call the library way. So the first thing I will share will be example of the library that they have written. So what you just see is something like the way you just call functions to in like purpose.to, and you call maybe a Cyrus2 or anything, you realize that those code has been written behind. So this is an example of the code that has been written to help with using large language models inside Spyral. But you don't need to a little bit worry about the library, because what you need to do when you want to use a library, for instance, is just to import it. So this, I'm going to use this example, but you can see the library itself. So let's say there's the library has been written. So that's and you don't need to worry about it because it contains how the notebook is going to access the API of Olama or ChatGPT, and what it's going to do, how it's going to send its results, how you're going to chat. But what you just do on your own side would just be to import it. So like here with the first code here is you just do spiral.notebook.import, and that brings that functions where we have those stuffs. So if we run this, for instance, let's register that, and we can be able to call stuff from that notebook. An article, we have articles on the website too about importing notebooks that has been made by others and using some of their functionalities. So after that, the next thing would be to set your the API of the LLM you want to use. In this case, we want to use Chat GPT, and basically you need to get let's say for instance, the API somewhere. So I have an API here, which you're going to use to access that. So, so let's go back here and run this. So we'll run this, we keep that in mind. Oh, please, someone can mute.
I think Charity, if you could mute your we're getting audio from you. Thank you. So go ahead, Augustine.
So after that, now what do you want to, like the way you just prompt normally on the maybe you're using Gemini or Chat GPT. So you need to create a prompt. And here, this is an example of importing data. So let's say what you see here is like you can just do that yourself too by just calling on data, but this time around it's text. And then you can just put your prompt there and assign it what you want to call it, like a variable you want to use for it that is going to something that. So that's exactly what is done there. And then we have this, the goal here is to create stories, 3 stories. You specify the number of words, so what you exactly want. And here it has been assigned the name prompt text. So we run this, and after running this, so it create for me, there's register prompt text. And now the chat function is coming from the library, right? So you just bring in that function to get the first story. And there's the time is asking for the API key. We'll pull the API key, and then we'll say, okay. And this time around, it's going to generate the first story because it has already received the prompt, which is to create story about Canada. So the first story is the spirit of Canada. That's what it is created. In the heart of the vast Canadian wilderness, there lived a young girl named Emily, and like that. So we have the first story. We then just do that for the second story. So this time around, we are not loading corpus. We are not using existing ones, but we are actually generating. So it could be something in your research that you're trying to also get. It could be, so this is the second story, and we get a third story. So to be able to have some kind of comparative analysis, also to be able to have them together. And you remember now that we have all this loaded in, we assign them a corpus name. So they are all collected text, and then this is what this next cell does, is going to assign them. Now the corpus, you've seen this, and then you see we get a corpus ID. And which means if you take this ID, for instance, if you take this ID and you take it, let's say to Voyant, for instance, we have a link here. If you just copy that ID and put it here too, you can also create a Voyant version of.
You didn't copy the entire ID. You missed a letter.
Okay, so let me go back to. Oh, I mixed the 6.
There you are.
6. Thank you. And then we put it down here, and then we just do that. And then we have the Voyant version of the same thing. So which means we have created 3 corpus, the first stories, a corpus containing the 3 story. And let's go back to our notebook. What else can we do with this? Now that we have a corpus ID, we can now start calling what we do we have been doing all this while, calling all this to. So we can call the readers to's. So we call the, let's say for instance, just to be able to see that, we can open a new cell, and then as you know, we have the corpus, dot two. Let me see. Let me reduce. You can see that. So we say the corpus, which is the name of a variable dot, which what we assign, and then we can use, let's say we use Cyrus2 now this time around, and we can close that, and then on the same corpus we start analyzing using the Voyant tools and just calling various tools against it to do our analysis. But another thing we can also do, apart from just using the tools, we can also have some kind of predefined thematic analysis. So let's say, for instance, the same story. So let's say the same story, and this time around, let's pull that corpus ID. So this time around, we're bringing it to another notebook, but we're calling it the ID of that stories, and we're assigning the stories. So we call it variable stories ID. And now that we have assigned it, what do we want to do this time around with it? This time around, we want to look at the themes that cut across so which we call the thematic analysis. And as you know, we create a prompt, like the first thing we do the other time. And in this prompt, you see some things there which you can adapt, but it's just the kind of what should be done, and the spacing and how the text should join and all this stuff. So you don't need to worry about that before the end of this session. There will also be a discussion on JavaScript, which will give you some basics. And let's grab our OpenAI key in case it's still needed here. And we go back to that, we run this. And when we run this, it's able to fetch the stories as we have it and separate it with the space, I want it to appear. So what we do, we're going to call some function. So we need to import the notebook created, the library. So here we're going to bring the library in, and what we need from the library this time around, we need the function or the method that is going to accept the prompt and then get the themes from it. So we run that, and then it's going to have to OpenAI key. It could be the endpoint of your systems, Llama, which you are running locally. So it depends on what you want to use. And this time around, it's telling us that 3 stories has the following in common, which is the outline: appreciation for nature, kindness and compassion, spirit of adventure, unity and community, cultural diversity, resilience and perseverance. So we see that this is a sort of thematic analysis that we have made open to the large language models to perform and give us the output. But there are other forms of thematic analysis you can do that you can just deal with blank kind of data that you just have, like let's say this one, that one, and then or corpus that you have, and you want to see this, what is the theme that cut across them. But this time around, you don't want the large language model to just suggest any, but you have some categories that you put in place. And that's another example. But the whole thing is, these are notebooks that you can also work on, just edit and make use of some of this code that has been written by the developers or programmers behind. So let's try this last one. So this time around, we'll bring the library in, and when we bring the library in, you remember we have to get declare the kind of the large language model we want to use. And these are sample text. It could be corpus that you have, or a group of collections. So these are sample text. And what we want to do, we want to classify just the way we did with the other 3 stories. So we want to be able to say, okay, what's the theme? But then this time around, and this is where prompt engineering comes into place. You can also shape what you want. Like, so we give in the prompt. So this is where you create your prompt. So you talk about, this is the text I'm going to give you. These are the categories that I have. And let's say, for instance, let's say I change the text. For instance, I say, as a King student, you have exclusive access to blah, blah, blah. And then these are the categories. So this time around, I don't want you to just give me themes from everywhere, but I have this team. Can you just tell me what this one fits in? Is it a business text? Is it academic? Is it personal or news or technical? And that's what we have here. You have the prompt created, and then what we do, we run that. It's going to ask for OpenAI key. So let me grab that again. So we go back to this exploring teams of our own, and then we're going to put it right there. And okay, so this is not like just black box. It's very clear now that the category that I thinks it fits, it's academic, and the confidence and the reasoning, and I think explain that. It also give the explanation why it thinks that is the case. The text is specifically addressing the King students and discussing activities related to their studies and enrichment of their experience, which align with an academic setting. So to conclude this particular session, what I would just say is we know that in analyzing our tests, our corpus, we using Voyant and Spyral, it allows us to have not just a sort of distant reading, but to know what is going behind. You can use Python, you can use others, but you just use big library and you get the result, but you can't see the process and also the process. And also the same thing is what we've just demonstrated, that using the large language model in Spyral also make you to give you the ability to make some track, to make some adjustment, and also to see what is going on. And you can also see the functions that has been written that is making all those things to take place. So thank you.
Thank you, Augustine. Can you stop sharing and can you put the links to those notebooks into the chat? So what you're seeing is a very advanced
Wow.
use of Spyral, where Spyral, we've built a notebook that you can import that allows you to send chunks of stuff to a large language model and to get back answers. And you saw Augustine first used it to actually generate stories. This can be used if you're trying to test a questionnaire. You can actually use large language models to pretend to be a certain type of person and see how they might answer the questionnaire. It can be used in a number of different ways. And then you saw sort of thematic analysis, and then you saw categorization. So these are things that you can do with these types of when you have access to the large language models. One key thing is you saw Augustine had to paste in that token. So he has an account on OpenAI. If you want to use OpenAI, you have to get an account. But the same library will work on a local model if you've installed a local model, and that's much more advanced. And if you know how to do that, you know how to do that. So, any questions about these notebooks? Or does somebody have a notebook they want to show? We've silent.
I want to just add something, because I just see that this notebook is behaving like OpenAI playground, because this Spyral notebook is behaving like that, because I see what Augustine did, which normally I used to play some time with OpenAI playbook, where you can also query their models to give you some kind of response, like the way we use ChatGPT, but on their platform you use those coding like Python to get those things to play with the different kind of models, and how they will react to your questions, and how by using the temperature, setting the temperature and all those things. I think I am now getting to see also that Spyral also is giving the same thing. So that's another aspect I learned today.
Yeah, and as you point out, you could have done all of this just using ChatGPT, uploading text, typing in a prompt. You could have done it manually, but it goes a lot faster, especially if you want to classify a lot of chunks of text. It goes a lot faster if you write a program. And as you said, you can use Python to do this. There are Python notebooks, examples out there, but we can also do it within Spyral. And I think Augustine has put a couple of links there. I'm going to go to the last component of this workshop, which is to look at reading JavaScript. So this is I'm gonna close some of my windows. Here's some of my notebooks that I have here, and um, and get us to this one here. So this is linked at the number 3 here, reading JavaScript. So what this is a notebook to try to give you some experience reading the code. It's not going to make you somebody who can write the code, but it is going to give you the ability to understand how the JavaScript code works so that you can debug, you can solve problems as they come up, and you can read code and copy it and adapt it in various ways. And so I'll just go through this and talk a little bit about it, and then I'll let you loose. And it's got a bunch of things that you can try. So first of all, some just basics about how Spyral runs code. Typically, as you're creating a Spyral notebook, it is not going to run all of the cells. It's only going to run cells when you click the run button. But there is, up in the upper right-hand corner here, there is that double arrow, that sort of fast forward. If you click that, it'll go through and run all the cells in the notebook in the order in which they appear. But normally, when you're working, you're going to just be running the blocks of code that you need to. And what you typically have to do when you're working with Spyral and you're working on some data is you need to make sure that you've run the block that loads the corpus and assigns it a name like my corpus. And then you can run the cells that do the things that you want. You don't necessarily have to run them all. You can run the ones that do the things that you want. So let's look at how JavaScript works. JavaScript has two important types of code. It has what's called expressions, and it has what's called statements. There's also comments, but I'm going to set those aside for the moment. Expressions are a chunk of code that can be evaluated. So I'm going to give you an example here. I'm going to do a simple mathematical example. 56 minus 4. This is not a full line of code. It's just an expression, but it can be evaluated. And if I hit run, it tells me the answer is 52. So this is an expression. An expression is anything that can be evaluated that'll produce some type of result. It could be that I do something like hello world. Those of you who've learned to program have seen this before. This too is an expression. And if I run it, it evaluates it and says, yeah, hello world. I can do something like hello world plus hi there. And now it's added those two strings together and it gives me one string. So again, it evaluates it. You can have things like 54 is smaller than 22. Now this should evaluate to true or false. And since 22 is actually not bigger than 54, it should come out false. And there we are. So these are expressions. Any expression, a statement is an instruction to the computer to do something. So in some sense, if I do, show 4 plus 5, and typically a statement will be followed by a semicolon. So this is now a complete instruction. Some instructions don't make any difference. They don't output anything. But this one should actually output, it should evaluate the expression 4 plus 5 and then show me what the answer is. And there we are, 9. Often you can take an expression and turn it into a statement simply by putting the semicolon after it. It's now, in some sense, it's a full statement. It can take up a line of code. So that's expressions and statements. I'd like you to take a moment to play around with these expressions and statements. I've got some comments right there in the notebook. You can try different things and see what works. Take it away for a couple minutes, play around, and then we're going to start playing with, once we understand that, we're going to start doing stuff that's more and more useful. Okay, hopefully you've played around a little bit with some expressions and statements. And now I want to talk about something that starts getting useful, which is variables. So here I've got a little bit of code here with two lines of code. Oh, sorry. Both of these are statements. There's a semicolon at the end. So one of them says my query equals quotation marks monster close quotation marks semicolon. So this is a statement that puts some content, the word monster, into a variable. And then I can put that variable in other places and that content will be used instead of the variable. So I've given the variable a name, my query. I've given it some content, monster, and now I can load a corpus, in this case, Frankenstein. I can get a tool. I can ask for the trends tool, and I can specify, so I can give it the parameter or the property that the query is going to be whatever is in my query. So in this case, it should be the word monster. So you can see, you can sort of see how this, I think in Huang, she was actually using this way of doing things. You can see how you can use this to control your queries. So you can have different queries. You can actually save the different queries that you want. You can comment them out and so on like that. And I'm gonna sort of get rid of this right here for a moment and just type monster. I'm gonna run this, and what we should see is the word monster is now graphed over the word Frankenstein. You can see that the word monster gets used more and more, but I can now start editing this variable. So I can do monster creature. And now I've got two words. And I could add more words if I wanted. So I'd like you to sort of play around with this in the Frankenstein. Try changing the values of the query. And then if you want to get fancy, you can look at defining an array as opposed to just a string. But in a moment, I'll explain what those are, what strings and arrays are. So take it away, play around a little bit, and with this variable that you defined and putting stuff into it and then using it. Okay, any questions about variables? Now I'm going to add a new component, a new idea, and this will make things like variables more powerful, and that's the idea of data types. So in just about any programming language, you have different types of data, and the computer needs to know what type of data you're working with in order to know how to deal with it properly. So, for example, we've got numbers. Then we have a thing called strings. I'm actually going to add a code cell here, so because I'm going to illustrate this. So numbers are what we expect, you know, one, two, integers, real numbers, that sort of thing like that. Strings are what we would call text. And a string is different from a number. A string will be surrounded by quotation marks. So, you know, hello world is a string. There are various features to strings. So, for example, you can have really long strings that cross multiple lines if you use the tick. The tick is right above the tab key. It's the sort of it's like an apostrophe, but it's angled. When you have a string, you can surround it with double quotes or single quotes. But if you surround it with single quotes, you're going to have the problem that if you have an apostrophe in the text, that is going to be treated as the end of the string. So you need to escape characters like apostrophes. And so you do that by putting a backslash. So this basically, if I take this string and I put it in here, it it realizes that the whole thing is the string, including the apostrophe. That's inside the string. Whereas if I take that backslash out, now it's going to complain because as far as it's concerned, this is I don't is the extent of the string, and it wasn't expecting to see anything that followed it. So you always have to be careful with strings that you don't have the delimiter that delimits the edge of the string, that is not uh, inside the string itself, because then it'll choke. I mentioned that you can have longer strings with this tick. So I'm going to give an example of that. So I can have multiple lines. Here is some more. And if you think about it, you could actually put a whole text inside there as long as you escape any characters that look like ticks. You could put a whole text, you could assign that to a variable, and then you could do something with it. You could load it into a corpus, or you could process it or something like that. So that's a long string. Now, here comes something to try to distinguish numbers and strings. If I put 5 plus 4, and I evaluate this is an expression, I get 9. But if I put the string 5 plus the string 4, I'm now not evaluating numbers. I'm not sitting there and asking it to do math. I'm asking it to treat the 5 and the 4 as text, as just characters, as a string of characters. And so when I evaluate this, I get 54 because it's just going to concatenate the two. And this should help you understand the difference, if you will, between a number and a string. The next type of data that we want to work with are what are called arrays. And these are very useful and very powerful. An array is a list of items, and those items could be numbers, strings, another array, all sorts of various things. So when I evaluate that, it tells me I've got an undefined array. It's got 2 items. The items are the index of the first item is 0, the index of the second item is 1. You remember that in computer science, when you have a list of things, they count from zero. They don't count from one. So I can use this in various ways that are interesting. Uh, I can assign. I can create an array of words. So in this case, my query is the variable, and I'm going to put this array of 2 words into it. And then I can do what I was just doing up above, load corpus, Frank for Frankenstein, tool, trends, and then I'm going to give it the query is my query. So what am I doing here? I am calling the Frankenstein corpus, which is already there. I'm calling the trends tool. I am then passing it 2 parameters, 2 arguments, the name of the tool I want, and then I'm passing it what's called an object literal using the curly brackets. And in that object literal is one property, query, colon, and then what is the content of the query? It's a variable called myQuery, which I've just defined as these 2 things there. So now we sit there and we cross our fingers and hope this works, because whenever I type code like this, it did. Hallelujah. So there I am. I've got my array, and I can keep on adding words to this. Add the word love. Let's see if so the word love is at the beginning. Strangely, it sort of shows up also quite high at the end. And I could keep on adding to this array. So to summarize, we have different data types, numbers, strings, arrays, and then we have this thing, object literals. The object literal will be essentially a list of different properties where the properties are made up of tuples of 2 things, name and the content to the name. So in this case, the name of the argument, the property that we wanted was query. What property? What's in the property? The variable myQuery. What is inside myQuery? That's defined 1 line up by this array. So I'd like you to take it away and play around a little bit with those different types of data types. And then the next thing we're going to do, because we're getting to the end, is we're going to put it all together, and we're going to actually look at some complex code and see how we can put all these ideas together and use it to run Spyral. So go ahead and ask questions, put some questions into the chat if you have something that you want to ask. Yes, as Augustine said, you can also unmute yourself and just ask the text. Um, and try I've got a little try it there. See if you can sort of get that working.
Okay, thank you, Prof. I have a question.
Yes, go ahead.
I want to know, can we use LLM on Spyral, like this trend now, can we use LLM to explain these trends that you have that you just loaded? For example, does Spyral work with LLM to discuss this line of code that you just written now? Is it possible?
So what I've done is I've used LLMs to write JavaScript code. So I can go to here. I've got an LLM here. I'll start a new chat. So write me some code that will give me a string with a variable with the following text. So this is not a particularly fancy request, but I've used this to do that. And here I didn't specify which language, but here it's got a line of code in JavaScript, which I can use. So I've got let the message be hello world. So that's one way you can use it. The LLMs have limited understanding of Voyant and Spyral, so sometimes they may not be able to give you uh, an answer to how to do something in Spyral, but let's try it out. How can I get a trend graph for the word monster in Spyral? My guess is it's not going to know enough to do this, but you never know. These people could have trained their model. Yeah, it looks like they found something. Yeah, there you go. So load corpus, Austin, tool trends, query monster. So you could sit there and change the corpus. You could change the corpus name to whatever your corpus is, or if you have the corpus ID, put it there, and it will show you the code. And here it's given some even fancier code. So we've got the chart type and so on. So it seems to have they seem to have trained it on some Voyant code. I do need to warn you that obviously these LLMs know a lot more about programming languages like Python. They know a fair amount about JavaScript, but there are specific things in Spyral that are going to be different than just vanilla JavaScript. For example, we have all these functions like load corpus, which doesn't exist in vanilla JavaScript. But we've got all these functions that do things like calling tools, which only works in the context of Spyral. Does that answer your question?
Yes, thank you, Prof.
One of the things that we've actually thought of doing, but is, when you call up the help and you get this sidebar, we are experimenting with the idea that the sidebar might actually provide access to an LLM that you could use to get help with JavaScript and so on like that. But it's not something that's implemented, and we're still thinking it through. I'm going to show you so how I might do this. So here's the variable with the using the tick syntax. So we've got a couple lines of code. Then we can do load corpus. Load corpus. And now I'm actually just going to type my text. So what it's going to do is it's going to load the text in this string, and you could have quite a bit of text here. So whatever you have, it'll load it, and it should show the reader tool, and we'll see it. We'll see it there. Now it's not a lot of text. So there we are. 2 lines of text. Now I'm going to show a way of putting this all together. So here we have a variable, my URL. The string that we've provided is actually a URL. And if I run this, and here we've got the variable, if I run this, so it's going to go off, it's going to find the Wikipedia page for JavaScript. It's going to load it. We're obviously going to lose all the formatting, and we're going to have lots of sort of navigation stuff that is not that interesting. But there we are. We've got the text. This shows how Voyant and Spyral can go off and grab something. Now here's the trick. Can you figure out how to adapt this using an array to get 2 pages and create a corpus with 2 documents? Here are the URLs. This is for the W3 Schools opening page to their JavaScript tutorial, if you want to learn more about JavaScript. Here's the URL for this Wikipedia page. Can you adapt this, replacing that with an array with the 2 items? And remember that each item in the array has to be surrounded by quotation marks. You have to have a comma between the items. And arrays are the square brackets. So see if you can do that and load it up. And I think that's the end of today. We're at the end of the hour and a half, and we'll call it a day. I'll just describe what the rest is, what the rest that is there, and you can play around with it yourself. So I'm going to show how I would do this. Arrays are square brackets. With items separated by commas. So I've got the JavaScript Wikipedia page. I'm going to go get the W3 Schools page. And I'm putting that in quotation marks. I'm going to just check my syntax. I'm going to call this my URLs because I have more than one. I don't have to, but I like to have my variable names be meaningful. So I've defined a variable. I put 2 things in it. I then call those 2 things when I load corpus. And I am actually going to try a different tool. I'm going to try the documents tool because hopefully what it'll do is it'll load each one of these web pages as a separate document. So I get a corpus of 2 documents. Let's grind away. There we are. So JavaScript, I've got the 2 different documents, and that works. So I've got another putting together here, which you guys can do on your own. I've got a section here on what can go wrong with a series of I've got a collection. I've got a collection of code which generates an error. So the first error, if you run this one and then run that one, you get an error, and you got to figure out why you got the error. Here's something else that will generate an error. Here's yet another one that'll generate an error. So sort of look at these rules, try to figure out if you can figure out the errors, and that's a good way to sort of test yourself on your ability to read and to debug JavaScript, because nobody gets it right the first time out. You're always typing something and having to correct it. Now, at this point, I want to thank you all. We're at the end of this session. I'm going to stop sharing. You are going to get an email with the video to this session, but you're also going to get a link to a sort of form which you can use to evaluate this training. And we would really appreciate it if you fill out that form. We want to know what worked, what didn't work. Many of you are probably instructors yourselves, so we'd love to know ideas on how this can be improved. This is the first time Augustine and I have done this. These materials are new. Any suggestions that you have on how we can improve it would be appreciated. So please fill out that form and contact us if you want help. Bridging Divides is supporting us. We can help you with your notebook. We can do a one-on-one. We can help you build a notebook if it's still not making sense. So thank you all and have a great weekend.